Hi there, I'm the Myth Keeper. Welcome back to my channel. This week we're going to the outer cosmic void. We're going to be talking about the gods and goddesses that exist in Pathfinder that are inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft. We're going to be tackling the darkness and the spaces between spaces. These outer gods influence the events of the world of Golarion and have been doing so from the beginning. I love that this particular element of Lovecraft exists in the game, and we're going to really explore it in this video. Inspired by the cosmic horror works of H.P. Lovecraft, the Dark Tapestry refers collectively to both the Outer Gods and the Great Old Ones. The Outer Gods, along with the Great Old Ones, with whom the Outer Gods are sometimes confused, are ancient, inscrutable cosmic beings. The Great Old Ones are titanic monstrosities, imprisoned since time immemorial beneath the sea, deep within a world or on other planets. But the Outer Gods are even less comprehensible. These unfathomable entities lurk within the Dark Tapestry, the vast void between the stars and the material plane, and dwarf other deities just as those deities dwarf ordinary mortals. To worship these gods is to acknowledge a cold truth. The universe has no meaning. All the things mortal civilization hold dear, virtues, deities, great works, are things those mortals have invented to distract them from their own insignificance. History is a comforting lie, told because mortals are afraid of the dark. The universe is immeasurably vast, beyond understanding, and cares nothing for life. Ultimately, every creature is alone, unmourned, and unloved, and because life has no meaning or purpose, self-indulgence and nihilism are the only rational response. Azathoth. Azathoth is the demon sultan in the primal chaos, a roiling mass of destructive and transformative power the size of a sun, dwelling in the darkness between the stars, deep in the center of the universe. There, masked from mortal sight by a veil of swirling colors, he is surrounded by the other outer gods that make up his court, dancing and cavorting about him endlessly, filling the void with the sound of ghastly flutes. Azathoth is utterly unaware of and uncaring towards those few who have come to revere and worship him. It is precisely this blind, uncaring nature that makes Azathoth the perfect embodiment of a blind and caring universe. Azathoth's name, however, has great power over the outer gods when properly invoked. He has also sometimes been summoned by mortal priests, and though these summons attract only a tiny sliver of his attention and manifest as a form other than that of the primal chaos, they nevertheless lead to destruction on a massive scale. In his cosmic writhing, Azathoth sometimes throws off seeds that travel through the cosmos as malignant comets or meteors, until they finally crash into a planet. There they slowly gestate and spawn, bringing cataclysmic ruin to the world. Azathoth is also associated with the bizarre reptilian birds known as shantaks. When a mortal foolishly tries to make a shantak their mount but lacks the strength of will to maintain control over the creature, the shantak flies into the depths of space through means impossible to quantify, bringing its hapless passenger to Azathoth's court for one final glimpse into the horrifying truth of the universe. Hastur is the Great Old One who, though confined to the city of Carcosa on a planet orbiting a faraway star, is nevertheless in the midst of a transformation into a true outer god. He works towards this feat through his avatar, the King in Yellow, which can manifest anywhere in the universe the light from Carcosa's sun can be seen. The King in Yellow appears as a humanoid figure draped in yellow clothing, but there is nothing within the clothes, save a shapeless, horrifying presence. Hastur himself is also referred to as him who is not to be named, or simply the unspeakable. Self-indulgence and nihilism are at the heart of Hastur's worship, and he is popular among debauched artists and nobles who recognize no purpose to life other than gratifying their own increasingly grotesque and outlandish tastes. Cults of Hastur are united in their use of the yellow sign, a triskelion design that allows Hastur to observe and possess those who gaze upon it. The presence of the yellow sign among a city's graffiti is a foreboding indication that Hastur's attention has been drawn there, and these settlements soon find themselves under attack, either by Hastur himself, who seeks to draw cities into Carcosa, fueling his transformation into an outer god, or by Xhamen-Dor, a parasitic deity spawned by Hastur as he walked Carcosa's sewers. Nhimbaloth. An especially reclusive outer god who hunts along the shores of the River of Souls, Nhimbaloth is a shapeless entity known as the Empty Death. She preys on those who hunt souls as they travel down the river, but she devours both hunter and soul indiscriminately. Those she consumes have no afterlife or potential for resurrection. They are forever gone and forever nothing. Nhimbaloth is said to see through will-o'-the-wisps, and her trace is left behind in a symmetrical pattern of 7 divots along a shoreline. These are said to be her fingerprints.
Faceless undead haunt the places where she has passed, and plant and animal life in the area is especially hostile to the living. One place where she has particular influence is within the mush fens of southern Varissia, where will-o'-the-wisp oracles sap the drive and reason from their victims and leave them wandering in a vacuous stupor through the blasted swamp. Nyarlathotep. Nyarlathotep is a being of 1,000 shapes, each of which has a name, such as the Haunter of the Dark or the Black Pharaoh. Because he has walked the world in mortal form, Nyarlathotep is unique among the outer gods for appearing comprehensible and understandable. But this is a facade. The crawling chaos, as he is known, appears human-like not because he identifies with mortal concerns or cares for his mortal followers, but because a mortal shape makes it easier for him to do his work, spreading the influence of the outer gods. In his role as herald, messenger, and agent of the outer gods, Nyarlathotep is the outer god most likely to have direct interactions with the mortals. He answers prayers, teaches evil magic, and inserts himself into history, all to enable mortal cruelty, facilitating the release of the great old ones, and turning whole societies towards worship of the outer gods. He was instrumental in the fall of ancient Osirian, and some believe he led Taldor to launch the armies of exploration, a glorious folly that proved the ruin of that empire. There are countless tales of his interaction with, and often possession of, mortal cultists and magicians who dare to call upon him, and they all end in grotesque corruption and death. Nyarlathotep also lingers among Azathoth's court, carrying out schemes under the guise of the primal chaos's will. Xhamen-Dor. Xhamen-Dor, the living cancer, was born in the sewers beneath Carcosa, the alien city that is the home of Hastur. Somehow this great old one was transported to Golarion within a comet, crashing into the bottom of a lake during the devastation of Earthfall. Physically, it manifests as a twisting and vaguely serpentine-shaped mass of bone, hair, and fungus. The inmost blot, as Xhamen-Dor is also known, exists to conquer worlds by infecting the living with itself. Its victims, the seeded, enact its will and seek to spread its influence until the entire world is just an extension of Xhamen-Dor itself. Then, once only the seeded remain, Xhamen-Dor uses the last of the planet's energy to return to Carcosa, which in turn absorbs the world Xhamen-Dor has brought to it, allowing Carcosa to slowly grow. Yog-Sothoth. Yog-Sothoth is one of the greatest of the outer gods, almost rivaling the power of Azathoth. In appearance, he is said to be a congregation of iridescent spheres, brilliant, foaming bubbles that constantly expand and collapse in upon themselves. He has other manifestations, however, including the lurker on the threshold, a mass of black tentacles that endlessly writhe, reach, and grow, and a mysterious humanoid figure behind a shimmering veil. Yog-Sothoth embodies all of space and time. He exists in all places and in all moments simultaneously. Paradoxically, however, he is unable to manifest in the mortal universe unless summoned, a magical act that almost always results in untold destruction. He is known as the Key in the Gate, and magicians and cults research him in an effort to master time and space. But some of those who have delved deep into his secrets describe him as an ambivalent figure, rather than a malevolent one, who guards cosmic secrets and makes them accessible to those who dare ask for them. Yog-Sothoth reveals the true nature of the universe. But this is a thing that once seen cannot be unseen, and wise mortals turn aside from Yog-Sothoth's offer of cosmic knowledge in favor of a more mundane existence. Dagon. On other worlds, Dagon has been considered among the Great Old Ones, but on Golarion, Dagon is worshipped as a demon lord. Dagon, the Shadow in the Sea, is the demon lord of deformity, the sea, and sea monsters. He holds court in an infinite ocean covered in disconcerting islands and deep-sea trenches, filled with incomprehensible sunken cities. He appears as a massive creature with the lower body of an eel, a head reminiscent of a deep-sea predator, and 4 thrashing tentacles in place of arms. Dagon began as a Qliphoth, and no mortal understands his transformation into Demon Lord, though it earned him the enmity of his former kin. Dagon is primarily worshipped by boggards, sahagins, scum, and marsh giants, though desperate and depraved coastal villages have been known to pledge themselves to this Demon Lord as well. Bokrug. Bokrug the water lizard dwells in a distant and forsaken corner of the Dimension of Dreams, in a land that was once heavily populated but is now a desolate and barren realm surrounded by a nameless lake. A realm once ruled by a mighty human empire, but now ruled only by his hideous amphibious minions. Bokrug himself is a vast creature, a vaguely iguana-shaped monster with a beard of writhing tendrils and a long tail tipped with a stinger. Bokrug spends the majority of his time slumbering, far down in the depths of his submerged lair. No rivers feed this lake, nor does it drain into the sea. Yet the still, ominous waters are neither stale nor brackish. Somehow, they connect somewhere deep underground, and by way of this secret dark waterway, Bokrug's influence has access to the lakes and rivers of all dimensions, including that of Golarion. Shub-Niggurath is an outer goddess and one of the spawn of Yog-Sothoth. She is a perverse fertility deity, said to appear as an evil cloud-like entity, an enormous mass which extrudes black tentacles, slime-dripping mouths, and short, writhing legs. Small creatures are constantly being spat forth by this monstrosity, which are either consumed into the miasmatic form or escape to some monstrous life elsewhere. Shub-Niggurath is a fecund goddess and has mated with probably most of the dark tapestry, giving birth to powerful offspring. The goddess's sobriquet, the black goat with 1,000 young, refers to the vast number of spawn she has birthed. Her most dangerous spawn are referred to as the dark young, living cancers that consume all they can get their hands on. The black goat of the woods with 1,000 young has a relatively strong following within the Inner Sea region, compared to other gods of the dark tapestry, usually localized in rural areas, especially forests, jungles, or swamps. The largest cult following is around Lake Carthen, which is also home to a piece of Shub-Niggurath, the Watcher in the Bay, the result of an occult ritual designed to call it out, enacted long ago by a worshipper Ariadna. Shub-Niggurath was responsible for spawning millions of neothelids into the surface of Golarion during the Age of Creation. Most neothelids venerate her and pray for her return so she might give birth to another clutch. Outside of Golarion, the dimension-hopping aliens called the Migo also commonly worship the black goat with 1,000 young. Yig. Yig is the great old one of cycles, procreation, and serpents. He is undoubtedly the least evil among all the great old ones and outer gods, but he is still a terrifying deity, willing to devour his own worshippers if he is hungry. Yig's true form is that of a scaled, monstrous humanoid with a snake's tail and head, and he can also appear as a snake with a crescent mark upon the brow. Among his followers, Yig is sometimes known as Yig the Wise, and sometimes known as Yig the Destroyer. Yig's favor manifests in bountiful harvests and hunts, and healthy babies who sometimes bear crescent birthmarks on their brow. His displeasure results in the birth of monstrous babies who kill their mothers and drive their fathers insane, and always bear Yig's crescent moon as a birthmark. Creatures that harm snakes or Yig's clerics sometimes suffer from serpentine nightmares that sap their intelligence and eventually turn them into snakes, but he is a god that rarely holds grudges, often seeing the potential of turning old enemies into future allies. Yig is worshipped by nomadic and rural communities who live close to the land, and his cult has no presence in cities. Unlike most great old ones, Yig cares about his worshippers and protects them if they practice the proper rites of worship, but failure to do so leads to swift punishment. Mhar. Mhar, the World Thunder, is a great old one existing as a living volcano, with razor-sharp crystalline legs and fangs of lava around the caldera, surrounded by a cloud of ash. The lava constantly erupts and then cools or melts away, causing Mhar endless pain. Eons ago, a unique planar rift caused the essence of the plane of fire and the plane of earth to fuse together at the edge of the material plane. This eldritch event caused the birth of Mhar. Seeking to alleviate its pain but unable to leave the material plane, it instead chose to travel the universe and settle on hot, molten young planets. Mhar rested in the core of such planets for some time, but eventually even the primordial heat would prove insufficient to keep it sleeping, at which point it would awaken and destroy the planet. This cycle repeated numerous times while Mhar sought entry to the elemental plane of fire. Its power was insufficient to reach it directly, so it burrowed into the core of a young Golarion, taking advantage of the Storval thinning, where the veil between planes is thin, and waiting there, growing in power to accomplish its goals. Then something occurred it did not expect. When Sarenrae opened a corner of the material plane to create the Dead Vault, she also inadvertently killed the sleeping Great Old One. But such an act was insufficient to permanently destroy Mhar. As Mhar eventually awakened again, it found itself trapped under Golarion's crust and went insane. Its psychic convulsions rebounded between itself and Golarion's surface, intensifying its madness and creating the Kodar Mountains on the surface. Some scholars mistakenly believe this to be the sign that Mhar failed to be born, while its cultists know that its gestation is unfinished, and may take uncounted ages to complete. Mhar's goals are simple. It seeks to erupt into Golarion's crust and cover the entire world with magma. Worshippers congregate near volcanic areas and seismic active rifts, aiming to spark geological events. Through magic and living sacrifice, they hope to force open the correct vent and awaken Mhar. They believe that Mhar's birth can be predicted by a sudden increase in earthquakes and volcanism, and when it finally happens, Mhar will cover northern Avestan and eventually Galarian itself in fire, ash, and dust. Great Cthulhu. This towering impossibility, neither octopus nor dragon nor giant, but something far worse, must surely be the herald of the end of time. Although Cthulhu is imprisoned on a far-flung world, his dreams span the gulfs of existence and are capable of touching upon the sleeping minds of sensitive or artistic souls, inspiring them with insane visions and driving the creation of all manner of eldritch artistry. In such ways his cult spreads like a night-born virus of the dreaming minds across all the worlds on which sapient life dwells. Cthulhu is worshipped by various aquatic races and folk who dwell along the coasts, but also among certain decadent or fringe societies of artists, poets, and philosophers. When they form, his cults are secretive and careful to hide their allegiance to the Great Old One, meeting only in desolate and otherwise abandoned locales hidden from society's notice. Central among his cult's beliefs is the prophecy that one day the stars will be right and great Cthulhu shall rise from his corpse city to usher in the end of time, wiping clean all worlds to make them ready for his kind. The cultists believe they might be spared this fate through proper obedience and fealty, when in truth, Cthulhu is unlikely to notice the difference between those who worship him and anyone else. Cthulhu's cult is associated with cataclysms, dreams, and stars. In some remote places, Cthulhu has dedicated temples. These are monolithic structures of stark encyclopean architectural style, but most of his faithful lack the resources to build such temples, and instead make do with what they can, hiding away personal shrines in underground chambers, or in shacks or glades in the remote wilderness. His favored weapon is the dagger, often one with a curving blade.
And that's my video on the dark tapestry in the world of Pathfinder. Next week, I've got something entirely different coming at you. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.